Recently, I did a little survey asking you guys, how is your developer team composition? And from that survey, it turned out that almost 80% of the people watching this channel are solo developers. I was not prepared for that high of a number, honestly. So I figured I should make a few more videos dedicated to you guys, the poor solo developers out there. I've made videos before already about pitfalls of solo development. Generally, I don't recommend it if you can't, but clearly for a lot of people, solo development is still the way to go. And that's why I want to make this video a bit more positive and the good things about solo development and how you can make the most of it. For a lot of people, solo development is basically a necessity because they simply can't find anyone to collaborate with, or they don't have the full-time commitment that someone may need, things like that. But I think there are some other advantages as well that I quickly want to go over. One of these things is that you can set the pace. A lot of people, they just do this as a hobby. They don't want to make it too like business, and they just want to have some fun making games. And if you're doing that, you don't want to be in a team where there's like pressure on each other to keep delivering. Sometimes life just gets in the way. Sometimes you need to take a few weeks off development, and you're the only person that gets affected by that. You're not holding back other people, and it allows you to work much more relaxed on games. So especially if you're a hobby developer, solo development is the way to go. And even if you do want to make some money, well, all the profits goes to you if you're a solo developer or like your publisher, but you don't have to split everything like 4 ways or whatever. We need to make a lot more money here at Bite Me Games if we want to pay all of our employees like a decent wage, compared to if you're a solo developer. I could probably live off the Forge industry income, even how little it may be at this point, just from, not having to share it. And I think a mistake that a lot of developers make, especially once they have that first game out and they have like that little bit of money coming in, is seeing, okay, we have this much money, we're gonna hire this many people, and then we're gonna assume that it makes better games. But solo developers actually can make really good games, and it's really important to understand that more people doesn't mean that you'll have better games. As a solo developer, there's still a very high amount of stuff you can do, and honestly, a game idea is just one person that needs to come up with the idea. Of course, you have the artist and stuff that can make it look better, but there's plenty of really great games that's made by one person or maybe even 2. But honestly, after that, there's a very high diminishing return with bigger teams. There's probably plenty of other reasons why solo development is great, but I quickly wanted to start with that. So now I have some tips for you. I think it's about 7 in total of how do you make the most of being a solo developer. What are some recommendations that I have for solo devs specifically? I also interact with a lot of our viewers, and usually they are solo developers, about like what is their situation, what advice could they use, either through our Discord, which you should join if you haven't, or by emailing me with like a specific question that you have. So I do feel like even though I'm not a solo developer, I have interacted with quite a bunch of solo developers at this point and have actually helped them. So I think that these tips will help you as well. And the first thing that I want you to do is do less. Now, hear me out. This may sound very weird. What do you mean do less? I have so many things to do for my game, but I think the problem a lot of solo developers have is not accept that they're solo devs and that there will be limitations. I think the most common thing I see here is almost everybody wants to start a YouTube channel about their game. And honestly, my answer for that is don't do it. It works for us because we're not solo developers, because I can spend a lot of time on this channel and we have the rest of the team who's just working away on our games. But you yourself, you're gonna be working on your game. And if you're then also on top of that gonna be like, I need to do Twitter posts, I need to do YouTube devlogs, I need to go and do Twitch streaming, I need to make TikToks, I'm doing the accounting of my company. All of these things take away from development, and I think you should really prioritize development. Just accept that certain parts you're not even gonna bother with. Another great one is music. Yes, you can try to like play around in Bosca or in like FL Studio and make your own game. Probably you won't have that much experience with it though, and you'll just be wasting a lot of time that you can focus on the things you're good at. Most of you people are also programmers, so just focus on mechanics. Focus on using your skills as programmers. Let the rest go a bit back. Don't focus on like learning 3D modeling out of nowhere. Use assets wherever possible, and just that way cut down dramatically on the development time and how quickly you can release a game. And also related to that do less is unlearning perfectionism. That's also a really big problem I see because, this is my game idea. This is my baby and I want it to be absolutely perfect no matter what. But this kills game developers because they'll end up spending 7 years on a game because it has to just be perfect. Like the music has to be perfect, the art has to be perfect. And usually they also play like AAA games, so they want to be like, I want to be like Zelda. You're not gonna be that. It's really hard to unlearn that perfectionism. It's really hard to just accept that, hey, this is the best I can do and this is just going to be it. And of course there will be some backlash probably. That's what we had with Forge Industry. It's not a perfect game, not at all, which means that we also get some negative comments, mainly about the looks, because we're not artists. And it sucks, but just by learning that, hey, this is still playable, this is still, like, it's not horrible, it's not perfect, but it's not horrible, and it's not the main part of the player's experience in our case, we should just chip it. I could spend probably another half year or a full year even just on making the game look prettier, but it's not going to be worth it. I'm not going to be learning that much new stuff compared to just making new games from the start. And generally, it's also just going to burn me out much faster. So don't try to go for perfect. Go for perfect maybe in one aspect, such as your mechanic, or if you're an artist, but the other things, just let them be basic. Let them be like, you know, grade them personally. If you're like, how good do I feel my art is? If it's like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, that's fine. Don't try to push to like the perfect 10 out of 10 like model with like high poly, things like that. Next up, something that I see a lot of people also forget is marketing. Whenever I talk to solo developers, they talk about, I'm stuck with the art or I'm stuck with the mechanics. I still need to program for so long. And then I ask them for their Steam page. Like, hey, do you have at least a Steam page? Are you like collecting wish lists already? Nobody has a Steam page. So I try to call this out in as many videos as possible, but if you're working on a game and you've been working on it for more than 2 to 3 weeks, make that Steam page like as soon as possible. You can use shitty art, you can have a non-complete copywriting text, but you should have a Steam page. It will help you so much in advertising your game, because suddenly people don't need to write down the name of your game anymore if they see it. And it will also just slowly build up. You won't get a lot of wish lists every day, but if you have a store page up for longer, you're always going to have more wish lists. Steam themselves also suggest having that store page up as fast as possible, as well as other game marketing experts such as Chris Zukowski. So just do it. It's not that much of an issue, and yeah, it's $100 to get that store page, but if you're not making like a small prototype, if you're actually working on a game that you want to sell at some point, you need that Steam page. Just get one and get it as fast as possible. The Steam page is your main source of marketing, and from then on, depending on how far you are, you could look into things like the Twitter posts or YouTube videos or the shorts, but don't do them all. Pick one, pick the platform that you yourself use the most, schedule out a bunch of posts like at once, and then forget about it for like a week or for 2 weeks and just keep on developing. So this way you don't get overwhelmed by, oh, I need to make TikToks and a Reddit post and 9gag memes about my game and such. Don't do that, but don't do nothing in terms of marketing. So many developers, they just work on their game and then they have like a vertical slice, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm planning on releasing in like a month or 2, but I have no store page yet. How do I fix this? And the honest answer is, it's really hard to near impossible to fix it. Next up is, okay, you're a solo developer, probably because you couldn't find anyone who like matched your skill set or who really wants to work on your game, but that doesn't mean you should go into it all alone. And what I mean with this is, one of the big things, one of the big advantages you have when you're working in a team is accountability. Basically, if William or Thomas in our team doesn't work for like 3 days in a row, I'll be there and I will call them out and be like, hey, what's going on? Why are you not doing anything? As a solo developer, that's not the case. The only person that's like holding you accountable is yourself, and usually we're really good at making excuses of like, oh, but it's really busy at work, so I can't really work that much. Or it's like, oh, I just want to chill or like hang out with some friends, so I'm not going to be working on my game. And this slows down your development enormously. So what I suggest here is you find an accountability partner. This could be someone that you just know who maybe is like a bit interested in your games, but not really that much, and like doesn't want to join. And you're just gonna like ask them for like, hey, do you have half an hour a week? And I just even sent you an email where I give you an update of everything I've done. And then you can just be like, hey, good work, or like, hey, why didn't you work as much this week? Just someone to keep reminding you that you need to work and you need to deliver value on your game. If you don't have anyone local, I want to plug our Discord again. I'm pretty sure that if you go into our Discord server, there's like a channel looking for partners. I think what you should do is just make a little post there. Be like, hey, I'm a solo developer. I'm working on this kind of game. I'm looking for someone to hold me accountable. And then ideally you get matched with someone else where both of you are holding each other accountable. So you schedule like a half-hour call or whatever every week, or you like figure out whatever works best for you, just to update each other on the progress. Similar to, you know, posting stuff in our showcase channel, just to get some more feedback as well, but not have someone actively developing, because that's a lot harder. But just to have someone who understands the struggles a bit and who can like help guide you in, hey, maybe we can see if we can do a little bit more next week, to keep you driven and to just also, yeah, keep cheering you on almost. And then man, I'm plugging the Discord way too much here, but try to find a community as well. Our Discord is probably pretty solid. There's also plenty of other places where you can like hang out in forums, in Discords, and anything else really, specifically for indie developers. It can be really hard sometimes, and it feels like you're the only developer in your country basically who's working on indie games. But in reality, there's plenty of people out there in the world who are all thinking that, who are all like, man, I'm the only person here who's making like this kind of game, or I'm the only person in my country who's like interested into indie games. That's also not the case. I have already connected so many developers with each other where they're like, oh, I am the only person who makes like this genre of game, and it's like I have so many struggles. And then I can be like, hey, no, there's another viewer, let me connect you two together, or maybe they live in the same country. Why don't you meet up once and you can just learn and get inspired and know that you're not alone. This is really important to like mentally be able to keep developing your game. So I talked about the accountability. What this also kind of forces you to do is create a schedule. This is pretty general advice, but a lot of people also message me like, hey, I have trouble finding time, or I have trouble with discipline to like actually work on my game. And I suggest you make a schedule there. And something that's really important up there is that a schedule, you can spread it out over as much time as you want. A schedule doesn't mean that you say, every day I'm gonna spend 1 hour on my game at least. Because for a lot of people, especially if you do this at the side, that's not feasible. It's much better to schedule out a week goal, or maybe schedule out over months even, where you can be like, hey, every week I plan to have at least 10 hours of game development. And whether that's like, 2 hours every day, or whether that's like, 1 day a week where you just develop a lot, try to create consistency there. It's much more important to have a longer term consistency where week by week you're making progress, compared to, you have like 1 week of hardcore development and then 3 weeks long you do nothing, and then it's back to like a week of development. That's not optimal, because you'll have forgotten everything you've done basically, and you'll lose a lot of like your momentum and a lot of your time. Sub part of this, I always say this in these videos, what I do is we aim for at least 5 minutes every day. Just a small thing, but this will make sure that you won't like lose how does game dev work? How do I work? What is my game again? Just 5 minutes. Probably you can do this almost anywhere. Even if it's just like writing down some brainstorming ideas for like a game mechanic, still keep involved with your game every day of the week. And then my last one is very technical suddenly and very specific, but is something that a lot of developers also forget until after release. Find a way to test with multiple devices. A very common thing is, you develop on your machine and you fix things on your machine, but once you put it on Steam, there's suddenly hundreds of different setups, computers, drivers, Windows versions, and like keyboards, languages. All of these things are probably going to break your game in certain regards. Send out builds to like people with like random configurations and be like, hey, does this work? For example, a really common one is keyboards. In Belgium, we use Azerty. We don't use QWERTY, which means that a lot of games that have like hard-coded WASD, because that's what works for them, don't work for us unless we like change our keyboard. Nobody wants to do that. Similar stuff with like maybe you develop on a 1080p display. Well, suddenly your game looks horrible on 4K, but because you don't have a 4K display, it's much harder to test. Getting physical hardware or reaching out to people who have physical hardware can help a lot in figuring out, is my game actually compatible with everyone? You don't want to figure this out once your game has already been released. This is horrible, because then you're suddenly doing panic mode fixing of your game, and it's just a nightmare. When you're in a team like us, it's already a bit easier, because for example, one of our developers uses a Mac, so we automatically have to solve all Mac issues. I am an ultra-wide user, so I always break the game if there's no ultra-wide support. So when something goes wrong in development, we already know, because we have 4 different setups basically. You as a solo dev don't have that. If you're a solo game dev and there's something that I've missed that is really helping you out, please write it down in the comments down below. It's really nice to help each other out. We are all a community of developers here, and as I said, solo developers can often feel very lonely. Post something in the comments here, or even like some words of inspiration if you don't really relate to being a solo developer, but just you can do it basically. Anyways, that's all I really had to say. If you're new around here, we're game developers. We've made our own game. We talk about game development and just showcase you the entire world of how does it work being an indie studio. If that's something that interests you, be sure to head down below and subscribe, as it's a win-win for both of us. I get your support and you get these videos twice a week. Anyways, that's all I really had to say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!